What's up, guys? I'm back. Perfect Flow, episode 7. It's been fun so far. I have a quick update. So, training going good. Week 4 out of my 20-odd week build for World Orienteering Champs. So, the special things about the week 4, which we've just finished. This is early in week 5, but week 4 finished off last week. It was my first big hit out orienteering. So we had 2 races on the weekend, a sprint and kind of a short long distance, and that was really good to push the body into the red zone on both those occasions. More of a VO2 max effort in the sprint and more of a stamina effort in Sunday's short long distance. And man, I'm definitely tired after that. I think the 4 weeks had been building quite nicely. I didn't notice any accumulating fatigue, but I must have been pretty close to the edge, and I wanted to discuss some points around how much you can shuffle your training around within the week. And I calculate my training based on the accumulative training load in that week, and training load is based on duration and intensity. Takes both those 2 parameters into account. But if you do need to shuffle some training around within a week, how much scope do you have to do that? And I might have overcooked it a bit. Appreciate that the context is I have been training hard for 4 weeks, but I moved Thursday's hill reps on to Friday because I had to reshuffle some other commitments. And then I had a race Saturday and a race Sunday. And if you calculate the training load on those sessions, you see that half of my training load for the week occurred from Friday afternoon to Sunday midday, and kind of really pushed me over the edge. It would have been better to have that interval, the hill reps pushed earlier, not later. So that was a little lesson that you know the answer yourself, but sometimes you just have to keep reminding yourself. So I had to have Monday off, actually. I was pretty pooped, and those sessions are gone on Monday. Missed a cruise, missed a strength session. Tough. I can't get those back, so moving on. I'll introduce today's guest, someone who really needs no introduction, Sam Clark. So I've known Sam for a few years on and off, just with our crossing paths in trail running. And Sam came from the triathlon scene in Whakatane and has basically taken over New Zealand multisport, and he's really one of the big names. He's had top results in some of our Ironman races and many top results in ultra trail running. And of course, the claim to fame, the 3 victories at Coast to Coast, New Zealand's biggest multisport race, and one of the most hotly contested multisport races in the world. The field is deep, the talent is strong, and seeing his progression through the ranks to get the 2nd place and then to get the title and defend it on 2 occasions, certainly puts him among the top multisporters that we've seen in recent years. I didn't race this year, focusing on other things, and it'd be interesting to see what he does in the future. So we had a good talking about his origins as an athlete and the things that he used to do as he was developing, his work with coaching and the kind of sessions he used to do and the sessions he no longer does. We talk about his approach to racing now, and things like nutrition and salts were quite interesting to get his experience on those. So there's some good take-home points and some specific coast-to-coast and multi-sport stuff as well. Things that really separate the sport from other single-discipline sports, and hearing about the duration of the event as well, and the stress that puts on. Fueling, I think, is really important for people doing a long distance trail running and any long distance sport, really. So it was great to sit down with Sam and hear his ideas, and I hope you enjoy listening as much as I did having the conversation. So I bring you Sam Clark. Hi Sam, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Oh, no worries, Gene. Yeah. Welcome to my house.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be here, and it's great to be in the Bay of Plenty as well. How long have you been here for?
I've pretty much been living at this place in Tauranga for the last 3 weeks, but I've been over here for just over a year now.
Sweet. And you were originally from Whakatane, is that right?
Yeah, I'm one of many refugees who have come over to Tauranga just for more opportunities and sort of more like-minded people.
Is there anywhere else you've been in between those?
No, just been back and forth. It's good.
That's sweet. So what I'm hoping to do today is bring some listeners through your story a little bit. So from when you were younger and got into endurance sport, up to defending multiple coast-to-coast titles. When did you first get into endurance sport? What was your one sport? There often seems to be a single sport that many top multisporters were quite good at. Is that a story you're consistent with?
Kind of. Like the story goes, I started doing triathlon when I was about 6 or 7 and have just sort of never really stopped. But when I got into high school, I found that I didn't grow up near a pool or anything like that, so I never really did any swim training. I was much better at kayaking, and because I grew up next to 3 really great rivers, I was able to just paddle there heaps, and I found that throughout all the high school multisport events, I would always come out at the top of all the paddling races. So it just on the basis of that strength has been how I've built most of my multisport racing career.
And is that mostly with the club scene or a school scene down here? Where's most of the activity at?
Most of the club scene that there were two schools in Whakatane, Trident and Whakatane High, and most of the sort of multisport club kids ended up going to Trident. There's a particular teacher there, Helen Dobbin, who for years now has just been driving that school forward for things like the Go for 12, the Hillary Challenge, and Whakatane High, while I was there, didn't really have a lot of that. They since do now, but it started out a lot with just with the local club.
Yeah. Did you do things like what's a Hillary Challenge when you were at school, or I know Trident were pretty into that?
No. Trident, they were always inundated with people wanting to do the Hillary Challenge, but throughout my year and the years up above and below me at high school at Whakatane High, there wasn't really many people interested, so I could never put a team together.
Sweet. And once you were out of school, how did your sport continue?
Well, I went straight into doing an engineering trade. So I was able to sort of balance that quite well with training before and after work. Luckily for me, it was the workshop that I was training at. It was in Kawerau, so I grew up next to Mount Purewaki, where they have the Kawerau King of the Mountain every year. So I'd do that a couple of times a week and paddle heaps, and I'd have the like the Rotomars for great road riding, and Rotorua was just over the hill as well for some really good mountain biking. So I was placed right in the middle of some just really, really good training areas. And I never really worked to any particular program because I might have had to do like overtime here or there. So I just, before and after work, I just go out and do what I felt like.
Yeah, that's pretty cool that you can hold that motivation without needing structure in each week. And where is that motivation coming from?
I don't know. I think just by the time I'd finished an 8 to 10 hour day, I was ready to go and just rip everything to shreds. So I'd head out and paddle my ass off on the river, or run in the forest, or run up Mount Purewaki, or just go for a hard mountain bike. And I found it quite therapeutic and a good balance to being stuck in a workshop all day.
Yeah, you feel like the day is only complete once you've given something a good slog.
Yeah, pretty much. I wouldn't call my training habits like addictive or anything like that, but I don't feel like I've sort of done the day justice unless I've actually done something that's vigorously physical.
Sweet. And when did you set your sights on some of the bigger multisport races, and what races did you use in New Zealand to lead yourself into coast to coast over the years?
So like the big race around Whakatane when I was growing up was the Motu Challenge, and I've done that numerous times. I think I've been involved with it about 13 times now, starting off with like doing the mountain bike or the kayak as part of a school team, sort of doing 2 legs here, and then in 7th form I did the whole thing and ended up coming 4th, and on the basis of that I thought, well, if I can come 4th in the Motu Challenge, then I've probably got a reasonable chance of doing well at the 2-day coast to coast. And so I got myself an entry for that and ended up winning the 2-day coast to coast that year, in 2009, I believe. Okay. And sort of the rest has just been a continuation of that. We've got just going from strength to strength and each year improving.
Yep. And were you staying quite focused on the 3 sports for coast to coast, or did you get into mountain biking and swimming as well? How did you balance your training in those years?
Like up until very recently, I never worked to a program, probably to my cost. I would just do each week what I felt like doing, and coming into a long event, I'd do a lot of longer stuff, and if I was doing a shorter event, I'd do shorter stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's quite interesting, and I'm not sure that it is a detriment for everyone. I think there's some risk if you lose focus or lose direction, but for some people who have the motivation and are getting everything done in the first place, did you feel like there has been some detriment? Can you name any moments where you thought, I wish I had a coach to hold me on the right path?
Looking back to sort of those days, I was able to do a lot of like quite good self-coaching. I made heaps of mistakes. So now if I am working with a coach, I know the exact reasons why certain things are being done. I would write my own programs sort of back in the day, but it was mostly a case of just figuring things out, what worked and what didn't.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. And I think a lot of us have been in that place and then had coaches and then come back, and there are some people who stay with coaches, but I think if you do use a coach as a learning tool, then I think you do want some time without a coach to then test your own theories and put those things to the challenge.
When I did come to get a coach, it had to be somebody that I knew and trusted. So it was kind of a difficult moment to hand over the reins of basically my time and efforts into somebody else's hands when I had a pretty good idea already of what was and what wasn't working for me.
Were there any things in particular that you used a coach for?
Just for the structure, making sure that nothing was left out. When you're self-coaching, I think everyone's subject to basically taking shortcuts and sort of pissing off if you're having an off day, just half-assing your training.
Do you feel that you're normally on the easy side if you do lose direction? Is it in the sense of missing sessions, or is it training too hard?
Probably it's not so much missing sessions, but more along the lines of just doing the wrong things. Mm-hmm. Like growing up, I like each weekend I'd go and do sort of 100 and 160k rides both days, or going like 200k rides, that sort of stuff like that, just because it was something that I enjoyed. I just get on my bike, put the iPod in, or probably more accurately at the time, like a 128 megabyte
the
MP3 player with a whole bunch of stuff that's been illegally downloaded from the internet. And just set out from where I was living, close to Kawerau. I'd go over to Rotorua, grab a burger from Burger Fuel, and then bike back home. And that would just be what I'd do for the day.
And what was the expense of doing that? Do you think that you were too tired in the following week and the quality was being reduced? How does that come back to get you?
It probably meant that I never had that real high end speed that I needed to be competitive during those years with the front runners in coast to coast, or during some of the triathlon events that I was sort of just doing here and there.
So did you include some, or once you had a coach, the coach was including more faster sessions as opposed to the long slogs?
Yeah, predominantly what I was doing was just miles and miles and miles and miles and miles, which in retrospect, I think did me very well, because it meant that if I was ever going to train for something, I had this just colossal base of doing hundreds of Ks of riding, paddling and running just under my belt, all at pretty low intensity. But
Right.
I found that I would rarely ever get injured. I can't put my finger on any one time that I was injured or unable to go and sort of do anything.
And has that changed? Is that notably, did you become more injury prone when you started doing faster stuff?
Not really. I think one of the beauties of spreading your time across multiple sports is if a niggle comes up, you can always just sort of redirect your efforts somewhat into one of the other disciplines and sort of take the pressure off that one. But that, I mean, you have to be confident enough to say to your coach, no, I'm not feeling this today, or my knee's getting a bit sore, what's causing it, and then sort of figure it out.
Yeah, that's quite cool. That dialogue is
Important.
really important. Yeah. So your first year to coast, was that when you got second, or did you have a crack at some early ones when you were not quite on podium level?
So the year after
the longest day.
Yeah. So the year after I won the 2-day, I went back for the longest day, which was that year. That was the Great Big Weather Bomb event, and of course I'd gone out and bought myself a time trial bike, which had arrived about 2 weeks before the race, and I knew I could do about 70 Ks on it before my back would be shot to shit. So to have on that particular day, the paddle basically canned and then turned into a sort of a 200k ride, it sort of threw my race plan out the window.
So you just couldn't stay comfortable for that length of time in that position?
No. I mean, I knew nothing at all about what time trialing, or I just knew that I went out.
You had the bike.
I just had the bike. It had the fast wheels. It looked really awesome. It was light. It was made of carbon, and that's sort of all that really mattered to me in that and at that time. But I ended up 14th that year.
Okay.
I think the next year I came back and I got 5th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So that's quite cool to see that progress. I wasn't sure whether you just slotted in at the top or whether you did have to work your way up through the longest day ranks. Is that normally where the winner of the 2-day kind of slots in? Is that about the normal progression that people take?
Oh, I mean, that depends. I mean, had things gone differently that year, had it been the regular course, I can't really say where I would have ended up results wise. Probably somewhere in the top 10. I don't recall that I sort of changed anything too radically between the 2 years, so it would have depended on who else was showing up, as it always does.
Yeah, that's right. Those top places, 5th, 2nd, 1st, how does the top end of the field stack up? Is it getting exponentially harder to get those top spots, or do you feel like there's just kind of anyone's game on the day to get those top few spots?
It seems to fluctuate a little bit year on year, depending on just how popular the coast to coast is and who's doing what. Like, just for example, recently this year in fact, when Dougal's come back to do coast to coast, I mean, any other year had he stepped up to race, he would immediately have been sort of a top 3 contender. Or any of the other years that Braden Curry hasn't raced, he'd immediately be a top 10 contender, a top 3 contender. It's just so subjective to who else is doing what at a given time frame.
Right. So you have that pressure going into race day that there's still levers to pull on the day to try to get yourself further up the podium, or do you feel that those things are already predetermined?
Oh, yeah. How do you mean? Sorry.
Yeah. So could you, if you knew what everyone had been doing to build up to the race, predict who was on the best form given the course, or is there a lot of chop and change on the day as to where people play out? Like, do people bomb or?
Yeah, I mean, historically, Juddy's predictions for like the top 10 were mostly accurate, and I think he had his finger on the pulse of what people were kind of doing for in a rough manner for the months leading into coast to coast. But I think it is difficult to say leading into the race. Yeah, what the places are going to be. I mean, obviously there's favourites and everyone's got their eyes on them, but yeah, anything can happen.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is because to win a race that's so hotly contested, you do have to be one of the best going into it.
Yeah.
But I do feel that things have to go your way on race day. Is that your feel with coast to coast, or do you feel that you were just so strong going into it that you would have had to have quite a mare to not take it out on those years that you did?
For the last 4 years where I've been very competitive, or having that my initial second to Braden Curry, I think it was five years ago now. Going into the race, I was always going there to win. Like, I was going on with the attitude that I don't care what anybody else is doing. I know what I've done. I can run over, go past real quick. I can paddle down the river faster than anybody else who's racing. There's no reason why I can't win, and I think that year I ended up finishing like 2.5 minutes behind him. And the reality is, it was one sort of different kayak choice away from winning that year. I think, to win that race, you have to approach it with the mentality of coming in that you are going to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll talk about the kayak a little bit. There is a lot of variation from that course, I mean, week to week even. How quickly does the optimum routes on that course change?
Coming into the final week before coast to coast, a lot of as a rule for the last few years, the water level's been really low, and in order to have an understanding of what the river's going to do and where all the fast flows are, it's really important to get down there and like the Wednesday before the race, not the full way, but just to explore that top section and the bottom section, just so you know where the water's going to behave on it.
So the top and the bottom section are where the biggest braids are, or the most decisive braids.
That's right, because I mean the gorge doesn't change bugger all.
Yep. Right. That's pretty soon after race. So you just need one big rainy day, and the braids have changed significantly enough that if you're only coming second by 2.5 minutes, then you're interested. That could be the difference.
Exactly. Yeah.
And how much is the running course changing?
I haven't actually been over it for in the last sort of 12 months now, but I've heard that they've had great big weather events down there, so it's changed pretty significantly. But I mean, the path that you might take, sort of up and over, go past, may change a little bit, but I mean the overall premise remains the same. You're running up a rocky riverbed, so you have to be going into the race confident that you can go over rocks and roots and trees really quickly.
Do you feel that there's as much scope for improvement with the running course as with the paddling course because of route variations on the day?
I think my strategy with the run course is always go over it really, really slowly 2 or 3 times leading into the race, so that when you arrive on race day on the course, everything just comes back to you really quickly, because it's the course is so complex. It's impossible to know where you're going the entire time, but if you're running along and you've been over there recently, like 2 or 3 times, you get that recall. It's sort of just everything seems just a little bit more familiar to you, and so you might look at that tree and go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'll go over that rock or I'll cross there, and it just seems to be that like you're able to make decisions much more quickly rather than having to slow down, look where you're going, and just waste time, because on that course, seconds can turn into minutes very, very quickly, particularly if you're trying to follow somebody who's drifting out of eyeshot.
Right, so that's more of an emphasis on being decisive with the route, as opposed to picking all the details about getting the perfect route.
Certainly, you can make the route that you choose the fastest way just by committing to it. Or you can stop, wait, and then find the fastest route, and you've given up a few seconds here or there, which will add up.
The course is particularly rocky. It is a really tough course. Do you find that strange that you've got a sport that has something like road cycling, which is like really not that technical as far as the surfaces you're on, and then something quite as rough as the Goat Pass course? Has that always stood out as something pretty unique? How does that stand in the calendar as a race that has something as like purely physical as road cycling, and then something so technical as that Goat Pass run?
Well, I mean, it means that particular course is always going to be built more towards people who have a backing in off-road running. I've seen over the years a lot of really, really good marathon runners be totally confounded by that course and be really disappointed with their times, just because they can't get their head around running over rocks like that. I'm not an especially fast like road runner. I mean, I think my marathon PB is 2:37, which is respectable these days, but there are people who are much faster than that on the road who have gone much slower than that over Goat Pass, just because of the technical aspect of it.
When did you notice that you were good at technical running?
I spend a lot of time possuming and just out in the bush and the Uruwetas growing up, and I found that when I was training, I'd also gravitate much more towards off-road running through, when I say off-road, not just trail, like totally off-trail, just bush bashing through the forest, that kind of thing. And anything that stimulates your sort of foot-eye coordination will help improve you for coast-to-coast running.
Do you feel that you have improved a lot, or were you a natural from the start with the off-road stuff? Because I struggle to explain how one should train technical trail running other than telling them to go out and do it. I'm not really sure what it is that makes some people better than others, and whether it's even trainable.
I think it's trainable to a degree, but I think people with naturally good eyesight who are able to just pick routes better and faster, that's always going to be something that they're just going to be better at. Because I mean, if your eyes can't focus on all the rocks coming at you thick and fast, you're just not going to be able to make a fast route choice.
Yeah, I think that's where it is. It's with the eyes, and I've been trying to articulate this better to help advise people on how to run faster. And the few things I have noticed is that I'm looking slightly ahead. I'm actually not looking at where my feet are going, which was a surprise to notice, because I don't often trip on anything. So there is some kind of subconscious routines going on that are tracking where your foot should go, even when you're looking ahead. So maybe there's something to take home about that, but maybe it's just time. It's just time to develop that.
Just developing that slightly further ahead gaze that'll. And I don't know what the mechanism is, but it's like you're not even focusing what's directly in front of you, but your brain's already mapped it out, and so your feet just follow a few steps later as you actually come across those obstacles or rocks or paths that you've sort of looked at 10 steps ahead. Yeah. Something that I do when I first started training for coast to coast, there's a 100-meter long breakwater at the Whakatane river mouth, and I'd just run up and down there, full noise for like 20 minutes at a time, and just each time I got to the end, try and either do the same or faster, and just try and keep like a consistent speed going up and down the breakwater. And
So this is on the large rocks.
yeah, just really big
rocks.
unstable rocks.
Yeah.
And I found that you just get really good at it.
Mm-hmm.
At just focusing really quickly, and also discovered things like how your posture would affect you, body position, what your arms were doing, how that affected your balance, the difference between like shoe stack heights made a tremendous difference. Like I now I gravitate more towards like a 3 mil heel stack for the coast to coast run with the last Sportiva Helios, which I've used every year for the past 5 years now. But the difference between that and say like a Hoka or even just like a road running shoe is just night and day. You've got to have the right shoe for a particular course.
Yeah, no, stability is key when you're throwing your feet around like that.
Yeah.
The last thing you want on the early sections of the Deception is to roll an ankle or was it Minga? You start on Minga or Deception?
I
think it's
yeah. They're all just names.
Yeah, there's just it's so easy to come undone with a high shoe, and I see it all the time with school kids coming into orienteering. You've just got their road shoes and you throw it onto soft ground. It just needs like one little rock and boom.
Yeah, ankles are all over.
You're gone. So the minimal shoes definitely feel better on technical trails. I think, Hokas seem to be pretty popular while the trail is smooth. Twisty's fine.
Yep.
But I think as soon as it's pretty technical, you've just got more to deal with. Your ankle has more to manage on contact.
Oh, any time that you raise your forefoot and your ankle higher off the ground, it just opens it up to this lateral movement, rolling inside or outside. So
the sensation's also dampened on the ground, so the feedback's going to be a little bit slower. How did it feel when you got that second place? Was that quite a triumph for you at the time?
When I crossed the finish line, I do recall just heading straight for a table full of cream buns. But I mean, I was happy. But in the weeks after that, I did break it down and think like, oh, I haven't finished with this yet. I could have won that, and I have to come back and do it.
What were your take-home points? If you can think back that far.
Yeah, well, the major one for that particular race is that in hindsight, I made the completely wrong decision with my boat choice for that year. I opted towards a surf ski, which was modified for use in the river, and that was just to fulfill like some sponsorship requirements. And in retrospect, it was just totally the wrong call. It had never really been done. Surf skis are fantastic for out in the ocean and that sort of paddling in open water, but downriver, it filled up with water, and the relative speed of the boat to the water was never high enough so that the Venturis were able to operate. So I was sitting in like 10 liters of water for the 70 Ks, and if you can imagine just carrying an extra 10 kilograms in your boat for a start, it's just no good.
So they've got a little tubes going out, or they're just little holes that will kind of suck the water out. These Venturis, I'm not familiar with them at all.
Oh, the Venturi mechanism works. It's like it's a hole in the bottom of your kayak, or your surf ski more specifically, with a little sort of almost like a half circular shroud over
like
it.
Periscopy.
Kind of. It's and how it works is the relative speed of the water rushing past it creates a vacuum which draws out the water that you've accumulated inside your cockpit. When you're going on a fast moving river where the surface of the water is going at like 14-15 k's an hour, your relative speed is never high enough to actually drain it out. Like say if you're going 12 k's an hour on flat water in the ocean, it sucks water out really quick, but just doesn't work on rivers.
Damn, so you're sloshing around.
I was, yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know someone had taken a surf ski down before. Are you the first and last?
I think I established that it was a good way to basically throw away a good placing.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, damn. And when you came back the next year, you obviously had your kayak sorted. Were there any other changes?
To be perfectly honest, my training plan for my last 4 coast to coast, including my 3 wins, were identical. I kind of just settled on a program and a lead-in that I was really, really happy with. That seemed to work really, really well, and was, rather than being based around kayaking, it was gained more towards running efficiently and not having to exert myself too much over that run, just to be able to get over there fast and comfortably, and then still have enough in the tank to really, really hammer that river, and then just absolutely smash it across the Canterbury Plains on the bike.
Yeah. Do you feel that you can hammer your legs enough on the run and then have them recover by the end of 5 hours in the boat? Or does it still come back to bite you?
You can, if you manage it correctly. Coast to coast is so much about little details adding up to giving you one big advantage. Like for the mountain run, for instance, I wear, for the entire race rather, I wear compression stockings, and that's nothing to do with compression. It's more geared towards thermoregulation. It helps your legs stay warm when you're on the bike early in the morning. You come off the bike with your legs steaming hot, and then jump straight into like 10 degree, sub 10 degree water over the mountain pass. And for many people, that shock is enough to trigger cramps, and that's their day pretty much gone. But if you've got just a little bit of extra protection of your legs, and you don't get any cramp at all, I mean, by the end of the day, it can be a huge advantage. Even sitting in the boat with your legs next to the Whakatane River, your legs can get really, really cold, and people struggle to get going again at the end of the paddle. Whereas I was able to keep my legs nice and warm with just wearing long socks.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. I hadn't really thought about that before, but yeah, they can definitely take the edge of someone. Yeah. Letting those muscles cool down.
Yeah, just lots of little things like that.
Anything else that you played with over those years? Was nutrition pretty much the same on each race? Were there any problems to solve there?
Not so much. It was only for the first couple of years there. My first, I call it my big showdown with Braden. I probably had an okay nutrition plan. The next year when I came back and won it again. For the first time. Again, that was sort of just a fairly basic nutrition plan. But the year after, when Braden returned to do coast, Emily Miazga came on board, and we wrote up an extremely detailed nutrition plan, which basically aimed for me to be eating around 70 grams of carbs per hour of throughout the day, which worked out to be like over a kilogram.
Hours.
Yeah. It was just a huge amount of food, but that was the first time where I found that I'd really nailed my nutrition, and I just to experience what difference that can make when you never ever run out of gas. That's something I've been so conscious of ever since, of just being diligent about eating, being diligent about hydrating, and not just water, but also maintaining that high level of electrolytes as well.
What were you eating to get to 60, also 70 per hour, and how was that spread throughout the day? And did you have a breakfast leading into such an early start?
Yep. So I had fried rice for breakfast.
Yeah.
I think that might have been leftovers from oh my gosh,
Good.
from the night before. A lot of people sort of tend more towards brown rice, but on race day, I think it's got to be white. Everything that you eat on race day has to be the most easily digestible it can be. Any extra bit of stress or energy that it takes to digest food is going to work against you. But for most of the energy that I took on throughout the day was mostly gels.
Right.
Mostly gels and bars. I was aiming for sort of a gel is 23 grams, so two of those and like half a bar per hour over the run. I think on the bikes, I was for the run I was averaging about 60 grams of carbs per hour. On the bikes, it was about 75, 80, and in the pedal, I was able to put away nearly 100 grams of carbs per hour. It was mostly Coca-Cola.
Oh, true.
Yeah,
so have you got the tubes set up like a lot of them do, and you're just sucking away, or are you using like a vest with bottles?
Yeah, so I have three drinking straws on my PFD. One for the coast to coast race specifically. One's just clean water straight out of the river.
Oh, right. So the tube just goes straight down.
Straight,
you don't
straight
have to carry it with you, do you?
Yeah, well, I mean, why would you bother carrying water when you've got an unlimited supply of chilled water just right below you? Another straw containing like a strong electrolyte drink. Another straw containing gels. And then another straw leading to 3 liters of Coca-Cola.
Cool.
Yeah, so
the drinking array.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing to do for that paddle except for just paddle, eat, drink, and just think about how sore your ass is.
Do you feel that your stomach is close to some sort of threshold when you're out there, or are you feeling comfortable?
I've never been one to suffer from gastric distress during races from eating too many gels. To be honest, I can't quite understand how people get upset stomachs from eating gels. It's just sugar. You just keep putting it down until you don't feel like eating anymore, or you should never feel sick unless you are actually sick.
Yeah, it would be interesting to uncover why some people struggle. I don't seem to have any problem with gels per se, but I do know if I get dehydrated, then I have a problem with everything.
Yeah.
So maybe you've experienced that a few times. Like, well, we're not all invincible forever. There will be some way to screw it up, but it's nice if you can get down gels and Coke. It's just so easy, and it's definitely a struggle for those that can't. I don't really know you don't have another optimal alternative to go to, because they are just so easy to get down if you can.
Yeah, it's sort of quite hard. I mean, I have experienced to a certain degree in races just not being able to get down any more food. But that's most.
So you're feeling full.
Just totally full, and sometimes you get that feeling that you can't, that your body's just not digesting anything. I've never really been seriously ill during one of these multi-sport events from just eating. There's always been other factors in play contributing to that. Like heat stress is a huge one. Like if you're running in a really hot environment, the rate at which your stomach empties increases. So you might not even be able to keep up with your fluid intake, or you may drink too much water with not enough electrolyte in it, and totally run your body out of salts, which I've done on a couple of occasions.
Okay.
That kind of thing. But I think wrecking your stomach from eating alone is sort of, I find it's difficult to do.
So would it be right to say that you're pushing that sensation of fullness, but that in itself is not a reason to slow down? It's just your body telling you that your stomach's full, which is true.
Yeah. But that's sort of also bearing in mind that you should be working to at least some kind of basic nutrition plan, even if it's just a gel every 20 minutes or like half a muesli bar every like half an hour or something. I mean, it depends greatly on what activity you're doing.
Yeah, that's quite interesting that you have a difference between the running and the kayaking. It seems kind of obvious though. Is it the bouncing? There's something there. I can get to I think 65 running, and I'm feeling so full, whereas I know I can do more than that sitting down. So is it the oxygen, is it that the blood flow is different, or is it the bouncing? I'm not really sure.
I think it's just
Combination.
logistically, it's just more difficult to do. I mean, you've got to find your gel in your pocket and you've got to eat it, and I think perhaps even the rate at which your body can metabolize things when you're running is probably upset just by the jostling and bouncing around, particularly over a really uneven surface. But yeah, when you're on the bike, your body is basically still, with your legs whizzing around, and if you're set up correctly, you should have a little, like a picnic basket in front of you full of all your nutrition. That's just, you can eat it as you need to, and even more so in the kayak. You're just sitting there with drinking straws and food in front of you, so take full advantage of that and replenish all your energy stores.
So if your energy intake is a little bit lower on the run, do you feel that you get close to some sort of dangerous limit that then gets picked up once you get into the kayak?
Just having the understanding of how long it's going to take, what you can reasonably expect to consume over that time, but then also knowing that you're going to have an opportunity further down the track to compensate for the deficit that you've built up over the run. Like on the kayak and the bike, it doesn't matter that much.
Yeah. So there's an acknowledgement that there is that deficit. If the run was longer, then you'd have to rethink the pacing or the nutrition. But having such a long paddle, you've got plenty of time to pick it up. You were mentioning salts before. You've played around with different salts a little bit. Is there some insight there that you can share?
My first big lesson with running myself completely out of salts, my body's completely out of salts just through sweating alone, was in the Hillary Trail Ultra Marathon a few years ago. I was going really, really well.
It was just a really hot day.
It was just obscenely hot. I think you might have been there that year.
I got wrecked as well.
I was running along quite happily for most of the course, about 2/3 of it, and then about 10 k's from the finish line, my body just said no. I didn't cramp up. It was just like the energy switch had just been turned off. I literally crawled up a great big flight of stairs and lay on the ground.
To hang a staircase. Oh.
Yeah, so I literally crawled up that, and I think it's only about 3 k's from the finish line. So I just lay down there at the aid station, just begging people for electrolyte caps, because somehow I managed to I convinced myself that was what the problem was. And when somebody actually gave me some, I bit down on it, chewed it, and then it was like the switch was turned back on, and I was able to run quite happily to the finish line.
And how much water did you take that with?
No idea.
Yeah, or like
some.
Some. Right.
Probably just enough to get it in.
Right, just enough. It's not that you took on a whole lot of water.
No.
At that aid station. That's interesting, because that's like the opposite story to me. I had done too much. I had done a over concentrated electrolyte mix, and had just been taking on too much salt, and I just needed so much water to kind of dilute it, and I was just like peeing orange, like it was just so dehydrated.
Wow.
Just because the amount of salt. So yeah, there is some optimum point, and that's really interesting that you've found that, and you've tested it again recently, and you keep popping salts mid race, and you feel it's working.
Yeah, it's been quite interesting. Over the last few races, I've used like a concentrated electrolyte liquid. There's one that they call E-Lite. I use one that's made by Skybright Nutrition, and I for the Titled Ultra Marathon, I carried a small bottle of that throughout the course of the race, and just squirted a shot into it every time I refilled my drink bottle, and I found that by the end I was still feeling really, really good. I ran 4-minute Ks for the last 5 Ks of a 50K race, which for me was like, I could probably go even further or better in an ultra marathon. It was just body management.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. And what's the composition of the salt mix?
It's really, really high sodium.
Okay.
Sodium, some magnesium and potassium.
Yeah.
conversely, like in training at the moment, I'm mainly using a magnesium potassium supplement.
Okay.
Similarly, a liquid.
Yeah.
Just because I find that when I'm not racing and sweating excessively, I tend to hang on to a lot more water weight if I have a high have a high sodium consumption.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Was also listening to some stuff recently on some of the dudes doing some science on the Death Valley marathon, or one of those big races that start there, and the training that some of the guys are doing leading up to it. The more serious guys who are measuring the salt coming out of their body in the sauna, and they're doing bike in a hot room, and they're doing the testing, and there is a lot of difference between people, the amount of different minerals that are coming out in the salt. So it's not that much of a surprise that there is pretty big differences between people, and if people are struggling, it's worth trying to see if that's the catch for other people out there.
Yeah, I've heard some people talk about your sweat rates being really heavily influenced rather by your genealogy. People coming from, say, the hotter parts of Asia will have a much lower sweat rate, whereas people coming from a Northern European descent whose ancestors salted meats, and they were able to excrete like sodium salts at a much greater rate than others. So I mean, I don't know whether that's factual, but
there's studies to.
I've heard the argument.
That. Yeah, that's quite interesting. And also things like cold exposure seem to increase our ability to handle heat as well, which is quite interesting. That like similar proteins and enzymes get released, and you tend to sweat less as well. So it's definitely something that can be trained, but I'm not sure if it's the limiting factor for many people. We really don't know.
Yeah,
cool.
I think doing things like saunas and ice baths, it's great. It's great mental training more than anything. I think if you can sit in a sauna that's 85 degrees Celsius, look at your watch or the clock, and you've been in there for 40 minutes already, and you've got 20 minutes to go, and you just want to die, but you have to sit there and wait it out. I mean, there's fewer harder things you can really do, I think.
And you realize that relaxing is the best way to get yourself through, or working yourself into a mental storm is the quickest way to
doesn't help at all.
Fail there. Cool. Can you also tell us more about that victory at Coast to Coast, and also defending the title? How did it feel to cross the finish line on those occasions? Are you quite an emotional finisher? I mean, I think you're very proud of where you've come from, and getting to that stage. Did that feel like a big success for you finally getting over there?
It certainly. I remember thinking that the first time I won Coast to Coast, I had great big black glasses on, which was good because I was actually crying. Just thinking finally I've actually got to run on the board. But then also thinking this was kind of an easy win, because that year I won by something like 58 minutes. But then the real big reward came the following year when another 3-time champion, Braden, he came back to have a go at winning the race again, and it was quite interesting, because the lead in and the build up all through the race media and what people were saying, everyone just came in expecting him to win, and to be able to come in and beat him so decisively, was something I was tremendously proud of.
Yeah, and to back yourself through that process when you kind of feel like you're being underdogged. It's to come through.
It certainly adds a different different aspect to it when you do consider yourself as an underdog. Like the year before that, I tried to go tried to go toe to toe with him over Goat Pass and managed to do so to a certain degree. I finished the run sort of a couple of minutes behind him. He was looking very nervously over his shoulder, but the year after that, I conceded something like 15 minutes over the run, but was able to reclaim almost all of that on the paddle, and then pass him and increase that lead even more on the bike, just because I was able to I had my confidence that I was able to do that, and I hadn't wrecked my body early on in the race by pushing too hard early on.
Cool. And finishing, coming back to reclaim a third title, how does that feel again? Was that second one the big emotional victory?
It kind of was, and a lot of people mentioned this year, like, oh, you're not going back to defend your title. When I crossed the finish line last year for my third win, I kind of thought, like, yeah, it was like it is good to win. I was pushed, but without somebody either to chase or right my ass the whole day, it just didn't feel quite the same.
Yeah, so I think that's a testament to why we're in competition, and it is to compete. It is to go head to head with fellow athletes and grind ourselves against each other and see how we stack up against each other. And I think that's the same in training as well. We want other people who we can compete close to, not necessarily just beat all the time. We want to feel like there's things to think about on race day. There's things that can go right and things that can go wrong, and it all matters. It all matters if you're close. It doesn't matter so much if you kind of streaks out in front. It's an interesting dynamic, because for a lot of people it's intuitive to want to do the things that produce the greatest number of victories, but that seems to disappear once you get deeper.
Yeah, I mean, initially it is good to win, but then you find yourself going like, well, there's got to you want sort of more than that. You want to be pushed to a win, because if you're pushed, it makes you better, and knowing that there are other competitors out there close to your level who are working just as hard as you are, forces you to make yourself better.
Yeah, I think that's key, and for younger people who are getting into sport as well, it's finding that training environment where you're not the best is where you want to be. If you're top dude in your group, you need a promotion. You need to go find the older grade and find someone who can give you a bit of an ass kicking at first, but you'll be improving faster than anyone else, I think, if you're in that position.
Yeah, I think I've sort of close to that. I one of the early times where I've made some really big strides in my racing was when I stopped training with multisporters. I went out and paddled with kayak clubs. I ran with runners and got a running coach. I went and rode my mountain bike at the Redwoods with mountain bikers, and although I wasn't as fast as they were, they pushed me so much that when I came back to racing amongst multisporters who perhaps hadn't done that, I had a real clear advantage, just because it was like coming down from a high level.
Yeah, dropping down to the B grade, and it's not that people aren't trying as hard as they can in multisport. It's just that you're spreading yourself a little bit thinner across different sports.
Exactly.
You also have touched a little bit with adventure racing. Is there any other plans to do any more with that?
I've always maintained a relationship with adventure racing. Of course, I head across to China 2 or 3 times a year to race in the tremendously competitive league over there. But I think you're referring more towards expedition racing.
Yeah, that's right. How do the races in China feel? I haven't followed them too closely.
Oh, they're fast and furious. I mean, it's like doing a traditional multisport race, okay, but with 3 other teammates. But you're doing it sort of day on day for up to 5 days. But the expedition racing is another beast entirely. And I sort of dabble in it sporadically, and I've had some pretty cool moments, and I've had some extremely low moments. But I mean, that's the sport in a nutshell. There's no glory without pain, and in expedition racing, you're going to have so much pain.
Yeah, it's there to be experienced. I think it's just something out of this world. Being sleep deprived after 5 days and still pushing on. I do want to go there, see what it's like, see how long I hang around, but it's definitely there to be experienced.
Yeah, I mean, there's few other things that you can do in life that will expose you to the wealth of human experience that you can have during expedition racing. I mean, you so sleep deprived that you begin hallucinating. You will have you may fight with your teammates. You may run yourself completely out of energy. You might have some mechanical accident on a bike that you're 100 k's in the middle of nowhere and have to fix like your derailleur with a stick and some tape. All of these things have been experienced throughout the years.
And you're in some beautiful setting, and you can barely appreciate it at times as you're just looking at your feet. It's all just a world of extremes. Yeah,
for me, that's sort of the weird dichotomy of adventure racing, particularly with expedition racing, is that you go to some of the world's most pristine and beautiful locations and just hate yourself because you can't really take the time to enjoy it to its full potential before the race. You're busy organising things during the race. You're sort of trudging through it, sleep deprived and on a mission, and then after the race you can barely your feet are so swollen and you're so tired that you can barely move. So it's a lot of the places that I've been during adventure races, I often think I'd like to go back to just to experience them more in a more leisurely manner. Yeah.
So what's next for you? What have you got coming up?
Well, immediately this weekend I've got the Ring of Fire ultramarathon, which goes 72 k's around Ruapehu, and looking forward to that.
Yep.
The last few nights I've been sort of planning out what my nutrition's going to look like, and which gear I'm going to take, which shoes I'm going to use, and it's it's going to be a really cool race. I've run around there a couple of times already, but just not as part of a race, and it's a really cool part of the country.
And it's a rugged place to start having low energy. And it's very rough. I think you've got a nice finish to the race, at least, if you do start coming unstuck, but it's pretty unforgiving environment.
It's pretty horrendous, and I think as with most ultras, it's a case of so much of body management and discipline, and if you feel that you can go harder, just don't unless you're close to the finish line. Because if you have any good feelings, just store it away until you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. It just goes wrong so much harder than it goes right in those races. It's usually asymmetrical. What else further afield? Are you going to make a return to coast, or your thoughts still wavering? What are the other big races to tackle in New Zealand? I mean, Ironman's still calling. It's still hotly contested.
I really haven't thought too much ahead for this year. In June is the first lot of adventure races over in China, and I'm racing there with Dougal Allen, Simone Mayer, and Sam Manson. So we've got a really competitive team for that. So nice. A lot of my training during winter is going to be towards that quite specifically, and I expect my teammates to be doing the same. Thereafter, I mean, there are also a lot of ultramarathons being put on over in China as well. Some of them go through some remarkable locations, so I'd like to get over there potentially. But further than that, at the moment, I'm quite focused on continuing my studies and sort of just cracking on with things.
Yep, staying balanced, keeping fit, and it's also noteworthy that you do a lot of swimming and you really do diversify in your training, and it's pretty cool to see someone who does diversify quite a lot, but doesn't kind of just fall away in doing too many sports all at once. How do you feel swimming doesn't complement quite so well with running? Or do you feel like your fitness it just provides such a good base for you to focus on running when you need to?
It's all about maintaining that balance. At the moment, I'm trying to swim 3 times a week, and in other years, I've tried to swim five and 6 times a week, and I just found that I was just burning myself out. I'm certainly not fast when it comes to swimming. My technique is pretty bad, as my coach will be quick to point out. But as a time efficient sport or activity rather, for building aerobic capacity, it's just about second to none. I mean, you can get up. I get up and start swimming at 5:30 in the morning. By 7:30, I will have gone through all my sets and done over 5 kilometers before many people would have even got out of bed. So it's really easy to plan around. You don't need a lot of equipment. It's not weather dependent. You can always just do it, and it's in a way it's something like golf that you're always able to improve on something there. You're never going to just be like, cool, I've done swimming, I'm the best at it. Yeah. There's always something that you can improve on.
That's great. Well, here's to balance and keeping everything going, mind and body.
Yeah.
And I think there'll be a lot of people following you over the next year, whether you're racing in New Zealand or overseas. So best of luck.
Cool. Thanks very much, Gene.
And thanks for sharing some time.
No worries.